Welcome to episode 3, Troubleshooting with Garland and Farida.
That's right.
I
Oh,
tried to say that real cool.
yeah, you did.
Like
You were
my radio voice.
yeah. So today we're going to talk about a topic.
It's a good one too.
It is a good one. Should you have friends of the opposite sex when you're married?
Mm-hmm.
When you're married. Now let this be a disclosure. Like right here. This is just really our opinion of what we're going to talk about. So you don't have to like debate or come for us, anything like that. We're just saying what worked for us for 22 years of marriage.
Yeah.
Everybody's marriage is different. We are not here to judge anybody on what they decide to do with theirs. We're just here to drop nuggets and talk about this a little bit. And this is a question that many people have asked, what do you think about, like we're married and then I have a good male friend or you have a good female friend, do you think that's something that's healthy to have in a marriage? Is that something that's healthy to have in a marriage?
Well, like in scenarios, if we give you scenarios like why don't we start out with talking about when the person is dating?
Okay.
Let's start at the beginning.
So let's talk about that because I can relate to this, Garland. Because when I came, when you came around the second time.
When I came around.
Yeah, when you came around the second time, you had a little friend. And I had asked you about this girl, like, who is she, and you were like, oh, well, that's just my good friend. And I was like, oh, okay. And I remember sometimes she would stop by your house or things like that. But that's when you came around the second time. So we were just like talking again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know when the switch was in our seriousness about it or whatever. I just remember you coming to me and you were just like, I don't know how you and her, I don't think you guys never really stopped being friends. You just said, well, I'm serious about somebody. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did that kind of like break off? Because that would kind of help people too.
Well, in that particular scenario, I had known her since we were in 6th grade.
Okay.
So we had been friends over the time. I think this was now, I was 20, 25, 24. So it was a lot of time after that. So we had been friends for a long time, but I got kind of, I never wanted to come off as being like, I don't know how I can explain it, but how it really happened was when I knew that I was looking at you as a wife. I don't know why, but I had already had it in my mind that it wasn't going to be good for me to have female friends.
Right.
And it's just like, to me in that situation, we didn't, I mean, I don't know how you can be friends with somebody that you don't talk to. So I kind of could say that we did stop being friends because I stopped talking to her completely. Not even a little bit. So in that scenario, that was kind of, I don't know how many people look at doing things like that, but it wasn't a mean thing like that. It was just an understanding that, I was serious about this lady here, and I didn't want anything to be like misunderstood or mistaken as a distraction or anything like that. Because if I had free time, it was going to be to spend with you, not with anybody else.
Right.
So
you're saying that things about whether you have friends of opposite sex really should be established when you're dating.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, if you find somebody who you saying, this is going to be my wife or this is going to be my husband, that's the time to really think about your circle of people. Because, girl, I've heard people say, well, why do I need to give up my friendship with somebody, and getting, why do I need to do that? So what would be your response to Like we're just talking about dating now, not like or dating serious.
I think it's and this is just my opinion. I know that it's human nature to have what I call creature cravings. So it doesn't really matter who it is sometimes. It's that if you put yourself in positions and like I never understood this term like and I only really heard it like in the last few years where somebody would call somebody like their work husband or their work wife. You ever heard that before?
Yeah.
And it's not really like, how does that make sense? You know, like, and because the flesh is so weak, you have an arrogance on yourself that you won't fall into something. And that's how the enemy works, especially when it comes to relationships, because he doesn't like marriage. So he doesn't want you to get to the point where you do get married. So he'll have you mess it up in the beginning. And a lot of times perception is reality. And I know from my perspective, men, a lot of times we don't even really know if a woman is interested in us or not, because we don't really assume that a lot of times. And she could be totally into you and we be totally clueless. We're thinking that we're just friends and she's trying to do something else, because I know for a fact, and this goes with men and women, people don't want you until they know they can't have you. And when you get to the point where you're serious with somebody, then that person could have been trying to shoot their shot all these years, and now they're at the last point where, like, if I don't do it now, it's not gonna get done. So things change.
Right.
So I think that if you nip that in the bud, you stop that chance of something turning into something that it shouldn't, or even hurting somebody's feelings. Because a lot of times people will be friends with you and they'll think that this is leading up to something.
Right.
And you never really established that because I mean, how can you really say to somebody that you're friends with that I want to let you know now we never gonna be anything more than friends? Who says that? You know, you're just friends.
Right.
So if they're in that mind, they're thinking that I'm working on her or I'm working on him to build up, and then boom, you get with somebody else. It's like, you know, you hurt somebody's feelings. So you gotta kind of, I don't know how to really to say it other than cutting it off cold turkey, because you don't want any confusion, especially if you're trying to get married and you're looking into somebody that you want to be your future husband or wife.
Also, too, this is how I feel about it when it comes to the friendship thing. Like in that particular situation, I always ask people, if you have somebody as a friend and you find somebody who you want to be serious with, you know, even in the Bible, it says never be so self-confident and naive. You know, what's the big thing about maybe, you know, you use the word cutting somebody off, but not being mean. But what is the big thing about letting that person go? I guess to me, my antennas would have went up if you would have said, Farida, no, this is my friend and you have to deal with it. You know, like that wouldn't have set well with me, because to me, from a female's perspective, it would have been like who her? Like why is she, you know, even in the equation? Because if you're trying to pursue me as a wife, and vice versa, if I had a male friend over here and I'm like, well, Garland, I'm never gonna let this male friend go. It's just something that we a package deal. Like why? Yeah. What you have, I think you have to dissect that a little bit more mentally. A person will have to say, why don't I want to let this person go in such a way that, and when I mean let somebody go, I don't mean like be mean about it, like you said, because the thing about it, that if a person is your friend and you're telling them, you know, this is the person that I'm gonna be with, and you know, we're working on this, I don't think that it should be a problem with that at all.
I think there are caveats to that though, because in the conversation that we're even having now, the assumption is that friend is single. But what happens when that friend is married? I believe that's different, because now you have a couple that you both can be friends with. So it's not like, you know, me going out to lunch once a month with some girl or some woman that I call my friend. But if that person is married, then all four of us can be friends if we want to be friends. Then we can all go out to lunch and hang out if we want to every now and then, because some people do that. Couples do hang out together. They have get-togethers with car party, whatever it is. I don't know, but I think that changes it, because what makes it different is when that person is single. And when they're single and it's a one-on-one type of thing, like you going off by yourself. But if I'm with you and if we're friends together, then it's a different conversation. It's not like you going back texting back and forth with some man, or he calling you just to, see
Shoot
what's
breeze,
up. Yeah.
right.
If it's like then that's a package deal. Then that's a relationship that we can have. We can build a circle together. We can build ministry, businesses, or network, or whatever it is. That can be different. But in this conversation, we're talking about you're married with a single friend of the opposite sex.
Right.
Because if they're married, then it's a package deal. Then we can work this out together, and there's less potential for danger when we're all together anyway.
Yeah.
I don't believe that I would never go out to lunch with a woman. You'll never do that with a man. Even conversations. If this is something that we learned when we went to our premarital counseling, is something called hedges. Remember?
Yeah.
Pastor Garrett taught us about putting hedges around your marriage, and what he was saying was you have to put boundaries, protection around it. That means that there's boundaries, there's limits. And we went so detailed to say that if you're having a conversation with somebody of opposite sex for more than a minute, more than 60 seconds, you're looking for me.
Well, that was but see, now that's going too deep, because that was mostly for being in different settings too, like a ministry setting or something like that. So, because sometimes you may have to I don't want somebody to take that and run with it. Like, you have to have conversations, if you go over conversations with people you're looking, because I think that depends on the setting. And when Pastor Garrett was talking, he was talking about specific settings and what we were doing when it was pertaining to ministry. But I want to take this forward. So we're dating. And then we decide okay, so we've already established that should be something talked about when you are dating, whether you have friends in that situation or not, of the opposite sex. Now you're married. Okay. So hopefully that was talked about. And people come along a lot of times when you're married, and the same thing applies, because I guess for me, I would say this has always been my motto: never say what you won't do, but don't put yourself in the position to do it. Like, I could say for me, clear as day, I've been married 22 years. I have never sat down and had lunch with a man, married or single, by myself. I just never put myself in those situations. I was always brought up a little bit different, to protect the anointing on your marriage, to protect what a God has done. And I think sometimes, Garland, we just the protection isn't there for whatever reason. I can't really state what the reason is, because some people do have people of the opposite sex in their marriage, and they're perfectly fine. But you and I can both say that we've seen people who have had friends in opposite sex, and things have happened, and the marriage has been totally destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we said in the beginning, this is what works for us.
Yes.
But I think that when you deal with the situation and you really want to get to the nuts and bolts of it, if you are married to a person and you think it's okay and they don't think it's okay, the one that thinks that it is not okay, that's the way it should be. Because what you're doing is you would be telling them essentially that this person outside of our marriage is more important than our marriage to me.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's going to cause conflict with you as my husband or my wife to have them as a friend, but I want to have them as a friend anyway. So now you're putting them above it. So it causes unnecessary conflict, because now you're saying that my friendship is more important than you.
Right.
So if the man has a problem with this other man, you going out to lunch with him and hanging out like y'all used to all the time, then you got to stop that. And that's not me. That's not just my opinion. That's facts. Because if you don't, it's going to cause a wedge in your marriage. And you don't want that. And now if you want that, then that's a different story. That's a whole nother can of worms that you got to open up and try and figure out the root behind that. But if you're not willing to respect the fact that he or she doesn't want you to have that friend of the opposite sex, then you got bigger problems going on. Because nothing and nobody should be more important than your husband or your wife.
Right. And then, Garland, this is my thing, is that in a marriage, as a marriage progresses, you're going to have issues. So this is my thing. Let's say if I have a man as a friend, this is my friend that I have right here. Sometimes what will happen, you will begin to talk to that friend more about your problems than you will your spouse. And that's an issue because you have to learn how to talk to your spouse, not an outside person. And that's on the male part. And then for a female part, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine that.
And I think too that this goes back to the last episode we talked about personalities and cultures and background. Because if I don't understand that my background and the way I think is maybe different than yours, then I would think that your view of that, because you think it's okay, that you're not the one for me. But that's not always true. That what it is that you don't think like I think about it. So what I have to do is I have to give you the opportunity to respect my feelings on it. And then if you respect my feelings on it, then we can move forward, regardless of your culture or background or what you thought before. But if you choose to push your opinion and your views on it above me, now we got an issue, especially if we're married.
Right.
Because if a man or a woman is uncomfortable with you being around somebody, a particular person of the opposite sex, then and you choose to do it anyway, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
But don't think that because that's not already known by the other person that something's wrong with them. Because they may have grew up and seen their parents do that, where I had friends like that and nothing happened.
Right.
It's a person by person basis, and this is what worked for us. But I do know for a fact that if one person has a problem with it, then they both should.
Right.
And it should be understood and squashed and put to the side so you can move on.
And and people always use this like, well, you should be able to trust each other in your marriage or whatever. And I agree. It's not about trusting each other. It's trusting yourself.
Yeah.
Because we all know that things are going to come up. Once again, I always say this, never say what you won't do. Don't put yourself in the position to do it. Nothing is even worth that. So you have to figure this out. Like, why am I still running to this person when I should be really running to my spouse or talk? And that's with anybody. When you marry, you should keep everybody out your business. All folk, friend folk, church folk, parent folk, everybody folk. Keep them. It is about you and your spouse. And if you feel like you need more help, that's when you go find help. You go find a counselor. You do what you need to do. But that can be such a dangerous thing. And in the back of my mind, like I'm sitting here thinking about that, and I think I'm sweating because I'm like, I could not imagine you being my husband and you have a female friend and issues come up. And you go and you tell that female friend, because if that's your friend, you tell that friend stuff.
Yeah, you confide in friends.
You confide into another female about stuff that's going on up in here. I can't even, like, my mind won't even let me go there because I can't even imagine that. I think I would feel like so like almost like violated. Like, why are you telling this person about this? And the thing about it, I do know people work, different jobs and different things. Because, Garland, we do have to take into account that we don't work for nobody. Yeah. So we are business owners, and we really do spend a lot of time together because we run businesses, and then we work in ministry together. So we are really together like almost 24/7. Everybody is not like that. So you may have a person you talk to at work. I get that. You may have coworkers that y'all get together and have lunch and things like that. I'm not talking about things like that. I'm talking about that you have a friend and y'all are the opposite sex. Y'all kick it, y'all going out, y'all hanging out, you are confiding in this person. That's just not good.
And like we talked about the friend being before you get married, but friends can come along after you get married, and a lot of times that happens in the workplace.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, especially if you work like 8 hours a day or more, you spend more time with people that you work with than you do your spouse.
Right.
Because by the time you get home from work, the busy day, cooking dinner, whatever you got to do, take care of the kids. If you got kids, then it's time to go to bed and start it all again tomorrow.
Right.
So your consistent time of being next to somebody in communication for 8 hours at least is at the workplace.
Right.
And a lot of times these so-called friendships, and like I mentioned earlier, work husband and work wives, that stuff happens at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do any statistic reading on it, but I do know some people that got caught up with people that they work with.
Right.
And it's like you said, they were in a position and they didn't put those hedges around themselves.
Right.
And you get curious, and then I think I remember reading somewhere that somebody wrote that you're in a danger zone with somebody of the opposite sex at your workplace when it affects your day when they call in sick or they're not there. It makes you sad when they're not there. You miss them now. So why are you missing them? If it ain't other than them being able to help you with the job, you missing the conversation, or you missing the smell of the perfume or cologne, stuff like that. It builds up and it builds up. And eventually, over time, things can lead to things that they shouldn't, because you didn't take heed in the beginning and put the hedges around yourself and your marriage, and not be so overconfident that you'll never do something and you get caught up in it. And let me say this, it don't have nothing to do with looks.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many times have you seen, especially when you watch TV or see things when people get a divorce with somebody and they were married to this beautiful model or this guy that was super handsome, tall, dark, and handsome, and then they leave him for this bugaboo. It's no coincidence,
right?
Because it's about emotions, and when you are in vulnerable states, especially like you said about you're having issues, and then you have somebody that you can confide in, and they make you feel better. That's how the enemy works. And then that friendship turns into something that it shouldn't, because it was never any protection around you in that situation.
And the thing about it is that, and we have, counseled many people and taught to many people marriages and different things like that. But a lot of times when infidelity comes in, or a person stepping out on their marriage, it's not like they walked out the street and they seen somebody and they said, oh, I'm going to go for her or go for him. The 95% of the time is somebody within their circle.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be clear about that. So that's why we're bringing this up. 95% is not like somebody that they didn't know, or how people think it's a one night stand. No, it is something that has developed over time. Mm-hmm. And then, things happen in the marriage and different things like that that's not dealt with. And then they decide to step out. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so important to put those hedges of protection up around your marriage and deal with what you need to deal with within the marriage. Because a lot of times, this is a little bit off, but we get to looking at other things, and the grass really truly is not always greener on the other side. Yeah. They always say it's greener where you water it. Mm-hmm. It's greener where you invest in it at. So these are just some tools to just keep in mind. And if you are in a relationship, or if you are thinking about getting married, and this is something that's coming up, and you may say, yeah, I agree with you, but my future husband or future wife doesn't agree with me, then you need to go talk to somebody about that right now and get that even rectified before you get married. Don't sit there and marry somebody and you have these issues, because it's gonna go into the marriage and then turn into something bigger. Because how something starts, a person can go back and say, well, you knew that I had this friend and you married me anyway. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you just have to be very, mindful about that.
And there's conversations that need to be had before you get married. Even if you don't have opposite sex friends in the beginning, this is a topic that you need to have a conversation with. Would you be okay if I had after we get married, if I had a male friend or a female friend, would you be okay with that? Or I'm not okay with it.
Right.
Just make that known. That's not something that I want to deal with. And if that's known in the beginning, then when things come up, it's no misunderstanding. You know where I stand on it. So you have to let yourself, let your views on things be known. Because like we said, this is what worked for us. But at the same time, we had that established before we got married.
Right.
When we went to that premarital counseling, it just so happened that we both agreed with it anyway.
Right.
But it was something that we hashed out in the beginning.
Right.
Amongst other things that need to be said, this is one of them. So you don't have any headaches or confusion later.
Right. And, and this, guys, let's be clear, too. We're not saying that you won't never talk to anybody of the opposite sex, because me and Garland both, we do that all the time in ministry. I mean, it's not like people don't have our number or in businesses. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, can you imagine coming from a male's point of view? I'm sitting right here and then I'm telling you, hey, Garland, I'm about to go kick it with Charles. What, like, just from a husband's point, I mean, I can't imagine.
I'd be like, go ahead. The locks will be changed when you come back home.
I just can't imagine
I'm
that.
not going to stop you from going, but if you want to go, just realize there's consequences when you come back home.
Exactly. Like, I just can't imagine a man being okay with his wife just kicking it, and same with the female.
But there are people that are like that.
I guess so.
And this is just our opinion.
Right.
And doesn't mean that you're going to hell or anything. If you do that, it's, like I said, it's what worked for us, and we're just trying to share the nuggets that we had that help us sustain over 23 years. There's people been married 50 years that had no problem with it. That worked for them. It's just, it's like, to me, it's like skating on thin ice. You never know when you hit that one spot and you're going to be under.
Right.
So,
yeah. So this is a great topic. I'm so glad that we brought this up. And and like I said, this is just our opinion of what has worked for us. But once again, married couples, put a hedge up around your marriage. God has great things in store for you and that person and that spouse that you are with. And work together and invest in your marriage. And I'm telling you, years later, especially the young couples, years later, you would look back and say, thank God that I stayed stable. Mm-hmm. Thank God that, I love how our bishop always says, that nail in a sure place, because it's just not for you, especially if you have children, especially if you have kids. Kids do what's caught more than what's taught. You want them to see you are the blueprint for a marriage. Mm-hmm. You are the blueprint for the marriage for your kids. So just keep all of those things in mind. Anything else, Garland?
I mean, like you said, just like we are products of what we saw growing up with our parents, your children are going to be the product of what they see when you do it. So these little nuggets that we're giving is just stuff we just felt like God led us to share.
Yes.
And because people ask us all the time about, how to do this, how to do that, without being able to mentor people one-on-one. This is a great way to just reach out and let you know what's working.
Yeah.
What works.
So today on troubleshooting, we talked about, we think, in our opinion, it's not wise to have friends of the opposite sex, especially when you're married. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're married. But we pray that everybody does what's best for them. Yeah. And that's about it. So that concludes another podcast. Girl, are you enjoying this? It's going pretty good, isn't it? These topics.
It's pretty fun.
Is it fun? Yeah. You like doing the podcast with me?
Yeah. Well, you let me talk.
What you and you didn't sound too convincing, girl. You was like,
yeah. I mean, you like to talk, so
yeah. Well, that's why you married me, though, because I like to talk.
Yeah. Because people think I don't talk when I'm around you.
Right. Because I'm the talking one, right?
Yeah. Well, you can always tell when I'm on the phone with you because it's just me nodding. And,
Anyway.
And the kids will be like, who is that mom? I'm like, yeah, you know who it is.
Anyway. Well, that concludes another episode. See you guys later. Troubleshooting. Thank you for tuning in. Tell all your family and friends too. Tell all your family and friends. Tell them to tune in as well to the future episodes. Bye-bye.
Bye.